Can you remember what it was like when you were a little kid? Things are great when we're a child, right? We can imagine ourselves doing anything, and we don't have the expectation in our life that we're having any limitations. Maybe you've imagined being an astronaut and going to the moon, or being a professional basketball player for the Lakers, or possibly a fireman, or whatever it is that your heart could possibly desire. We had big dreams back then. So what happened? How did this change? Why is it that we get older and then suddenly we settle for just the status quo? We need to dream again, and I want to tell you, not only dream, but God-sized dreams. What is a God-sized dream? It's a dream that isn't so small that it's something that you know how to accomplish on your own. It's something that God puts in our heart that's so big that only He could do it, and yet at the same time we believe it, and in faith we move forward on it. That's going to be the subject of today's episode of the Audacious Faith Podcast. Welcome back to the podcast. And as always, I'm very excited to be spending time with you. And I love the subject that we're discussing today because it's near and dear to my heart. Dreaming big. You know, the Bible tells us that faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things yet not seen. We find this in Hebrews chapter 11. And I want to tell you something that I know something about you. Even though a lot of us have never met, I understand that you have had dreams in your life. You've had times where you've really imagined doing some huge things. And maybe it is possible that over the course of time, what has happened is the reality of life has kind of hit you in the face, taken a little bit of that anticipation, a little bit of that enthusiasm off, and the routine that we call our schedule, the routine that we call responsibilities, has caused us to possibly deal in reality. Well, you know what? God doesn't deal in reality, nor is He limited to reality. We need to get our God-sized dreams back. And that's what I want to discuss with you today. Back in 2011, I was dealing with a crisis in my life. I had been a dreamer all my life. Big things that I felt that God was going to do through me. And yet life, in many ways, had kind of kicked me in the behind. I had faced a lot of adversity, and I was coming off at that time probably 5 of the toughest years of my life. I had severe losses in my life. I had lost my mother to cancer. Later on, I lost my mother-in-law about 1.5 years later, and then my father. And so life had really been turned upside down. Some professional setbacks had also taken place. Some financial setbacks had taken place. Why am I sharing this with you? Because I understand that whoever is listening to this right now, some of you may be finding yourself in the same situation where once you had much more hope than you do now. Once you had much more anticipation, many more goals, a lot more initiative than what you have right now. Maybe you've gotten to a place where you've said to yourself, you know what, things are just the way they are. In fact, here's a phrase that I've heard so much and I hate it. It is the way it is. If that is where you're finding yourself in life right now, I want to encourage you. I want to challenge you. Don't settle for that. Don't settle for a life that is just average. Don't settle for something that was not your original intent. If God has put dreams in your heart, then I want you to go forward with it. I want you to believe it, and I want you to move in that direction knowing that He doesn't place it in your heart if there isn't some reason why He's put it there. Now, for scripture today, I want to give us an example that comes from the Bible, one of my favorite when it comes to God-sized dreams. And by the way, when I say God-sized dreams, I mean dreams that are so big that you can't figure out any way where you could see that come to pass with your own efforts. If you can see it coming to pass with your own efforts, and I want to tell you this, those dreams are too small. We're looking for God-sized, incredible, humongous, can't figure out how to do it types of dreams, because that is the way that God works in people's lives, and He uses people like that to change the world. Well, in the Bible, there's an example of a man by the name of Joseph. He was a young man, and this young man had a dream one day. And he decided to share that dream with his family. Let me tell you what the dream was. He said he had this vision that there would be these different sheaves that were standing up, and he saw his, and then he saw the older sheaves and then the smaller sheaves all gathered around and bowing down before him. And that was interpreted, of course, that by his family, that was representing his father and mother and all the brothers, and that they were all somehow going to bow down before him in the future. Now, I don't know about you, but I think you can probably imagine that maybe when he first went to explain this, it didn't go over so well. His brothers were already jealous of him anyways, because he had a special coat that his father had given him because his father just loved him so much, a coat known to us as one of many colors, and they were already jealous. So then when they heard this, they started to be very, very angry. And you know what? I want to tell you in life that a lot of people give up on dreams because others don't accept or receive those dreams well. And we get very surprised and shocked when we share what we feel God is revealing in our heart and revealing for our lives, and when other people don't see it, they don't accept it. In fact, we even sometimes call them haters. They'll come along and they'll try to discourage you, try to tell you, don't ever consider that. That's not going to happen. What makes you think that you're going to be this or that? Who in the world do you think you are anyways? And Joseph had that. His brothers came along and they even nicknamed him something. Maybe you can relate to this. They nicknamed him the dreamer. And they said this in a very sarcastic way. If these people were to come along in your life today, they would tell you, hey, why don't you just quit dreaming? Why don't you just quit having your heads in the clouds? Just get some average routine job that maybe you don't even see it having any big purpose, but just go ahead and fall in line. Don't rock the boat. Just live the responsible life like everybody else. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't be responsible, but what I am saying is this. If God puts some dream in your heart, don't dismiss it. Don't just throw it off to the side. Don't just refuse to take risks, but instead you walk in faith in that direction. I think about Noah, for example, who was given the vision by God in the Old Testament that there was going to be a flood. He told Noah to build an ark, and he gave him the very specific specifications. This ark was going to be huge, one that you could not hide in your backyard, and it was going to be built because of the fact that it was going to rain. It was going to rain for 40 days and 40 nights. There was going to be a huge flood. And the crazy thing about it is, it was so outrageous what God had told him to do, because the people on the earth at the time had never even seen rain. We're not even just talking about a hard rain. They hadn't even seen a simple rain, like the ones that we get here in Southern California. I mean, it rains for like 45 minutes and people think, the flood is coming. People freak out. They don't know how to drive in it. They don't know how to live in it. They don't know how to do anything. Some of the places where you're watching this from, you're probably laughing at us here in Southern California, just like some of you are laughing at my Lakers jersey right now because they had a horrible year, which hopefully will change, by the way. But here's the thing. This is what happened with Joseph. Joseph had haters right away. And often, I want you to understand this, often the people that are closest to you, like your family, like some of your longtime friends, those who you think would be happy for you, those who you think would be cheering for you, those who you think would get behind you. These are going to be the people that are going to be your biggest critics. They're going to come along and they're going to say, why are you acting like that? Why are you thinking like that? Why are you dreaming like that? That's never going to happen. And some of them will even get to the point of being haters. And that's very disappointing. And you know what happens for most people? We call this the scenario of disaster when it comes to dreams and these God-sized dreams. Most people listen to what others say and how others respond. And instead of focusing on what God has revealed to them, they put it aside and they just decide to settle. But you know what? Joseph was not like that. Joseph knew that God had revealed this to him. Joseph had it in his heart. And he didn't know how it's going to happen, and he didn't know the steps from point A to point B, but in faith, he believed it, and he was moving forward. Well, let's go on with the story. What ended up happening was his brothers were not thrilled at all. One day, afar off, they saw Joseph coming with his fancy coat of many colors, and they even said to each other, "Here comes the dreamer. We are sick of his dreams. We are tired of his dreams. We don't want to hear it anymore. We're also tired of him getting this wonderful treatment and attention that he's getting from our father. So you know what? When nobody's here right now, let's ambush him. Let's kill him. Let's get rid of him. We don't want to see him anymore." There's a lot of haters in the world today, right? You try to stand out and live for God, do big things for God, you're going to face opposition. Jesus even said himself, "All who desire to follow after me will suffer persecution." And sometimes that persecution is going to be at a very, very high level. Well, fortunately for Joseph, one of his brothers, one of the youngest ones, said, "Oh, let's not just do that. Let's just throw him in the pit here. Maybe we'll just sell him off into slavery, but don't kill him." He managed to calm the brothers down enough and get them to at least see that maybe there was a better way. He appealed to their desire to turn some type of profit. So he was sold into slavery, and he ended up in the house of a man by the name of Potiphar. Now, for those of you who may be expecting children sometime in the near future, Potiphar may not be the preferred choice of name for you, but that is one that is out there. You know, these names in the Bible were a little different than what we're used to today. And there's other names that I could list off, but we don't have time for that today. But Potiphar was a very powerful man. He was a way up in the Egyptian army. He was somebody who commanded people, and he had a household. And Joseph, because of the character, now don't miss this. When you have God-sized dreams and God wants to do things in your life, you may not see how to have that come to fruition. But one thing that he challenges us to do at every level along the way is to be people of integrity, to be people of character. No matter what the situation is, even if we do not feel that that situation is our long-term destination. So you might be hearing this and possibly you're working some job and you're thinking to yourself, "I don't know why I'm working this job. This is not my dream. This is not what I want to do." But what we don't get is that every step along the way to what God has revealed us is a new yard marker, a new pit stop, a new learning process, a new turn, a new direction in the GPS, the God positioning system, that's getting us from where we are to where he has revealed to us that we're going to be. So it's not your final destination, but it is part of your journey along the way. And so Joseph found himself in the house of Potiphar, and because his character was so strong, it wasn't long before Joseph was actually trusted by Potiphar and put in charge of the entire household to help it run while Potiphar was gone. And he was gone quite often. Now, in that household, there were servants, other servants. There were affairs that needed to be dealt with. There were financial affairs. There were physical affairs. There were different things that were needing to happen. But also present in that house, there was another person, and we just see her referred to in Scripture as Potiphar's wife. Now, let me tell you about Potiphar's wife. Today we have the term that you might hear with people that are very powerful and wealthy, and maybe they have some very beautiful wife. Maybe you've heard the term a trophy wife. Well, more than likely, Scripture tells us that this is kind of the situation that we more than likely saw here with Potiphar. It's very obvious that someone in his position usually had a wife that was very beautiful, and a wife who was not used to being told no, a wife that was used to getting what she wanted. And one day, as she saw Joseph going about the household, she decided that what she wanted was Joseph. Well, you would think that this would be very tempting to a young man, especially a young man who was far away from home, a young man who had been dealt, some people would say, a bad hand, a young man who was in a nice, loving situation and then had been dealt a treacherous blow by his brothers. You would think that he would say to himself at this point, "Hey, I'm getting a little prestige. I'm getting a little attention from a very beautiful woman. I deserve this. Potiphar's not even around. I'm going to go ahead and do this." And so Potiphar's wife was approaching him and gave him a very, very direct invitation. Come lie with me. Now, I want you to imagine being Joseph, being a young man, being in that situation, being approached by a beautiful woman with an open invitation. It wasn't even that he had to make the first move. She was making the move, and a very aggressive move. This woman was not used to being told no. She was not used to having anything withheld from him. And Joseph had every opportunity to be with this beautiful woman. But day after day, he refused her. And she kept coming to him and calling upon him every single day. And the reason that he refused her was very simple. He said, how, as I have been put in charge of my master's house, how could I sin against him and against God? Now notice that Joseph never says that she was not beautiful. Notice that Joseph never says that it wasn't tempting. Notice that Joseph never says that he didn't have some desire for it. But he was choosing to live a life of integrity, to keep himself zeroed in on the path of what God had for him, not to sin against his master and not to sin against God. Now, I want to tell you that part of the reason that you and I are not yet to the place where God has told us is the ultimate destination of the God-sized dreams that he's put in our heart is because we're still in the process of him getting us there. And part of the process of him getting us there and being that person that we're going to be then is that we have to become a different person than we are now, and especially a different person than when we were in the beginning. And every step along the way is intended for our direction, for moving us to a certain spot, and also for our growth. Are you growing where God has planted you right now? Because until we learn the lesson that we're to learn right now, we're not moving forward to the next one. We're not going to the next part of the journey. The reason we are where we are right now is because God is continuing to develop us into a more complete person. Even in James, it tells us that the trying of your faith worketh perseverance, that the man of God may be complete, lacking nothing. That is why we go through difficult times. So Joseph, he found himself in this situation, and one day Potiphar's wife decided, I am waiting no longer. She had run out of patience for this strong commitment that Joseph had, for this strong integrity. And I bring this up to you to understand that along the way of fulfilling God-sized dreams for you, you're going to do the right thing at times, and you're still going to get in trouble for it. You're still going to supposedly get persecuted for it. You're still going to end up having issues and obstacles that you're needing to face and find yourself in these situations because of that dedication. Joseph refused her, and one day she came and literally just grabbed him. Now, can you imagine that moment? I mean, what are you going to do? What are you going to do at that particular moment? It's a tempting woman anyways, and now she has grabbed him. And there was one way out. He was so determined to stay on the path that God had set for him that he pulled himself away with his clothes ripping because she wouldn't let go, and literally ran out naked. Now, I want you to imagine this scene. In fact, I don't suggest you try this, but if you were to try this, you try running out of some public place naked today and see if anybody notices, or see if you can get away with it. Maybe you've been like me and you've had some of those weird dreams. I've had dreams, I'm not ashamed to admit it. I don't know why. It's been a while. I've had dreams where I'm outside and suddenly I look down and realize I forgot to put pants on. I mean, have you had that type of dream? Fortunately, I wake up and it wasn't really real, but it's kind of crazy, right? And out comes Joseph with no clothes on. And of course, they hear the commotion, the rest of the people in the household, because there were many people in this household, and people outside of this area, which would be gathered around this very powerful man's house, see Joseph come running out. Obviously, people are asking the question, what happened? Well, of course, there is a real explanation of what happened. She came at him. He didn't comply, and he pulled away, and she wouldn't let go, and he ripped his clothing. But she wasn't going to admit that. And so to save face, what she did was she said, he came and attacked me, and while I was fending him off, his clothes were ripped, and as I screamed and yelled, he ran away. Well, so what ended up happening? She's a very powerful woman. Honestly, I don't know for sure whether Potiphar completely believed her or not. But even if he didn't, to save face, and with the situation of his wife, he went with her story. And Joseph now, despite doing the right thing, now finds himself in prison. Now, this prison was truly a rat hole. It wasn't, something really fancy with air conditioning, TV, special recreation times, lots of good food, things like that we hear about sometimes today in minimum security prisons or anything like this. This is maximum security. This is in a place where it's really like you have no idea when or if you're ever going to get out. And let's imagine for a moment being Joseph. Let's imagine this. Here's a man who had a dream. God put this great vision in front of him of how he was going to be and how he was going to be in a place of prominence and others would be down bowing around him. Then he gets sold into slavery by his brothers. Then he does the right thing in that situation. He refuses the advances of a beautiful woman so he doesn't sin against his master and against God. And now, despite the fact that he did the right thing, now he's rotting away in prison. Can you imagine a little bitterness that possibly would inhabit the minds of some of us if we were to find ourselves in that situation? Some of you listening to me right now have felt at times that God wanted to do big things through your life, and yet you've had challenge after challenge after challenge. And if you're not careful, you're going to fall into the trap that I almost fell into in 2011, and that is that you're going to give up on those dreams. You're going to say, oh, you know what? Oh, it may seem that God put that in my heart, but I'm just going to realize that I'm tired of being hurt. I'm tired of having that not happen. I'm tired of having life kick me in the butt. I just don't believe it anymore, and you're going to give up. Well, you know what? Joseph, he stayed in that prison. He continued to lead a life that was honorable. Eventually, I'm not going to go into the whole story because of time, but eventually he ended up being an interpreter for dreams, which got him to the Pharaoh himself. He ended up then being second in command in Egypt, and literally at some point in the future, because there was a famine in the land, not only did God use Joseph to be a great leader and to help the people by coming up with a plan that God had revealed to him to be able to have food and to be able to deal with all this. But that famine in the land drew his brothers and eventually even his father to actually come and kneel down before him, not even realizing it was him. The very dream that God had put in his heart in the beginning that he saw and that eventually would make Joseph a great leader that would save the lives of many was only possible through where he went through to get there. If he had not been sold into slavery by his brothers, despite the fact that that was evil, if he had not been then approached by Potiphar's wife, despite the fact that that was wrong, if he had not been falsely accused, then thrown into prison, then forgotten in prison, and then eventually gotten out, he would not be to the place that God had originally told him that he would go. See, never does God tell us it's going to be an easy road. He just tells us it's going to be a road. And by faith, the things that we cannot see now, that are not right in front of us, we've got to believe it and we've got to keep moving forward. Now, I tell you this, ladies and gentlemen, because I experienced something not quite as dramatic in my life, but after dreaming for many years and feeling that God wanted to do some huge stuff, after then having many losses, having many things go wrong, having a lot of people even mad at me because of failed ventures and different things that I trying to pursue that dream. In 2011, I heard a man by the name of Ed Milet actually be used by God in a tremendous way to talk about a speech about God-sized dreams. I remember it very, very well in late 2011, and I had been needing to hear that for 20 years. God used that speech that day to reawaken the dreams within me, to reawaken the fact and to give me hope. And I can only hope that in some way that possibly somebody that is listening to this today who maybe has had that sense of God's destiny for their life, but you've possibly given up hope or you're thinking about it because life has been tough. I want you to understand God has not forgotten you. God has not left you. The dream has not gone wrong. Everything that he has allowed you to go through up until this point has made you the person that you are right now and are going to be. Keep moving forward. Keep the faith. Do not give up. Look for the next step. But whatever lessons God is having you learn along the way, understand that he is creating in you a better and better version of yourself that he has made you to be every single day. And keep moving forward because that dream, that God-sized dream that could not be accomplished any other way but through the things that he's taken you through and continues to take you through, God's got it. God's got it. Do not lose the faith. I'm hoping that you will be encouraged by what we've gone over today. Share it with someone else as well. If you've not subscribed to the podcast, like I always say, hey, if you're on YouTube right now, there's a little bell right down there underneath the video. Please go ahead and just click that little bell. That way you're going to know when all the latest episodes come out. We want to get as many subscribers as possible. And make sure that you share this with others. Will you also please reach out to me at jgauthiersenior@gmail.com or by that name on Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn. I have enjoyed our time as always. I pray that God will bless you and continue to inspire you with the God-sized dreams in your heart. This has been the Audacious Faith Podcast. God bless you. We'll see you next time.